Listen, can you hear it? The sound of violins echoing through cobblestone streets, the rustle of sheet music in candlelit rooms, the applause cascading through gilded opera houses. For centuries, Vienna has been synonymous with music, the city where Mozart, Beethoven, Brahms, and Strauss created masterpieces that define Western culture. But Vienna's story begins long before the first waltz, stretching back 2,000 years to a Roman military camp on the Danube's banks. This is a city that survived barbarian invasions, Ottoman sieges, and Nazi occupation. It transformed from frontier fortress to imperial capital, from Habsburg powerhouse to Cold War pawn, all while nurturing the world's greatest musical tradition. Stand in Vienna's streets today, and you're walking where emperors ruled an empire spanning half of Europe, where musical genius flourished in coffeehouses and palaces, where the modern world was born in psychoanalysis and philosophy. Today, advanced AI technology allows us to transform historical records, musical manuscripts, and surviving palaces into photorealistic recreations, bringing Vienna's extraordinary thousand-year journey back to life. Join me as we experience the entire history of Vienna, from Roman outpost to musical capital, discovering how this city became synonymous with civilization itself. Vindobona, Rome's Danube fortress, 15 BC to 400 AD. The Romans arrive at the Danube around 15 BC, establishing a military camp they call Vindobona. The location is strategic, controlling river crossings and defending against Germanic tribes beyond the frontier. A legion camps here, perhaps 6,000 soldiers, building wooden fortifications that will gradually transform into stone. Stand at Vindobona in 200 AD and see a typical Roman frontier town. The military camp covers about 50 acres with stone walls, barracks, headquarters, and baths. Outside the walls, a civilian settlement develops. Merchants, craftsmen, tavern keepers serving the garrison. The town isn't large, perhaps 20,000 people total, but it's solidly Roman. Grid-patterned streets, stone buildings, temples to Jupiter and Mithras, all the infrastructure of empire. The Danube is Rome's northern boundary here. Beyond lies Germania, inhabited by tribes Rome never fully conquered. Vindobona is a watching post, a barrier, a statement that Roman civilization extends this far and no further. Emperor Marcus Aurelius campaigns against Germanic tribes and dies near Vindobona in 180 AD. His presence here, immortalized later in the film Gladiator, shows the city's strategic importance. But as Rome weakens, the legions withdraw. By 400 AD, Vindobona is abandoned, left to whatever comes next. The Dark Ages and Medieval Emergence, 400 to 1278. The centuries after Rome's fall are obscure. Germanic tribes, Huns, Avars, and others sweep through the Danube Valley. The Roman settlement deteriorates, but the location remains occupied. People cling to this river crossing, this strategic position, even as empires rise and fall around them. By 800, Charlemagne's empire reaches here, and a settlement called Vienna appears in records. It's part of the Carolingian Eastern Marches, Ostmark, frontier territory against steppe invaders. When Charlemagne's empire fragments, this region becomes Bavaria's eastern border. The Magyars, Hungarians, invade in the 10th century, raiding deep into Europe. Vienna suffers repeated attacks until 955 when Otto I defeats the Magyars at Lechfeld. The region stabilizes, and Vienna begins growing as a trading town controlling Danube commerce. The Babenberg dukes rule Vienna from 1156 to 1246, transforming it from frontier outpost to prosperous medieval city. They build fortifications, establish markets, and attract settlers. Vienna's population reaches perhaps 20,000. St. Stephen's Cathedral begins construction, the Romanesque church that will evolve into Vienna's Gothic masterpiece. The Habsburgs arrive. Dynasty and destiny. 1278 to 1529. In 1278, Rudolf of Habsburg defeats the Bohemian king and claims Austria. This moment changes everything. The Habsburgs will rule Vienna for 640 years, transforming it from regional capital to imperial metropolis. The Habsburgs accumulate territories through strategic marriages. Let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry. Vienna becomes the center of a growing empire. Austria, Bohemia, Hungary, eventually Spain, the Netherlands, and territories across Europe and the Americas. Walk through 15th century Vienna and see a prosperous Gothic city. St. Stephen's Cathedral towers over narrow medieval streets, its spire reaching 450 feet, one of Europe's tallest structures. The old Roman core is now densely packed with timber-framed and stone buildings. Markets bustle, guilds regulate trades, and the Danube brings commerce from east and west. But danger threatens from the east. The Ottoman Empire expands into Europe, conquering Constantinople in 1453, pushing into the Balkans, threatening Vienna itself. The Ottoman sieges. Vienna against the Turks, 1529 and 1683. September 1529. Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent arrives with 120,000 troops besieging Vienna. The city's garrison numbers perhaps 20,000 defenders. For 3 weeks, Ottoman artillery pounds the walls, miners dig tunnels to collapse fortifications, and assault after assault crashes against Vienna's defenses. Stand on the walls in October 1529 and watch the Ottoman army stretching to the horizon. Tens of thousands of janissaries, cavalry, artillery. The bombardment never stops. Sections of wall collapse. Food runs low, but Vienna holds. Early winter, supply problems, and fierce resistance force Suleiman to withdraw. Vienna survives, but barely. The city rebuilds stronger, adding modern star-shaped fortifications. For 150 years, Vienna stands as Christianity's bulwark against Ottoman expansion. July 1683. History repeats. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa leads 150,000 Ottomans to Vienna, the largest force yet. Vienna's garrison has grown to 15,000 professional soldiers plus militia. For 2 months, the Ottomans bombard the city, dig mines, and launch assaults. The walls begin failing. Starvation threatens. Desperation grows. September 12, 1683, relief arrives. King John III, Sobieski of Poland, leads a combined Christian force, 70,000 Poles, Austrians, Germans. The Battle of Vienna becomes cavalry warfare's largest charge ever. Sobieski's winged hussars smash into Ottoman lines. The Ottoman army collapses, fleeing in panic, leaving their camp and its treasures. Vienna is saved. The Ottoman tide permanently turns. From this moment, the Habsburgs expand into former Ottoman territories, transforming from defenders into conquerors. Baroque Vienna, imperial splendor, 1683 to 1780. Victory transforms Vienna. The city explodes beyond medieval walls, building the Baroque palaces that define its image today. Italian architects reshape Vienna into an imperial showcase. Watch the Hofburg Palace expand. The Habsburgs' winter residence grows into a vast complex, room after gilded room, housing the imperial court's elaborate ceremonial life. The Spanish riding school trains Lipizzaner horses for imperial spectacle. Prince Eugene of Savoy, military genius who defeated the Ottomans, builds the Belvedere Palace. 2 magnificent Baroque palaces with elaborate gardens, demonstrating aristocratic wealth and taste. Emperor Charles VI builds the Karlskirche, a church promising that if God spared Vienna from plague, he'd build Christianity's most magnificent temple. The dome rises 236 feet, rivaling Rome's best churches. Vienna's population reaches 175,000 by 1750, making it one of Europe's largest cities. The aristocracy builds palaces along the Ringstrasse. Musicians perform in noble salons. Coffeehouses emerge. Vienna's famous cafe culture begins here, spaces where ideas flow as freely as coffee. The city of music, Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, 1750 to 1827. This is when Vienna becomes the music capital. The combination of wealthy patrons, sophisticated audiences, and artistic freedom creates unprecedented opportunity for composers. Joseph Haydn revolutionizes symphonic form while serving the Esterházy princes. He perfects the string quartet, establishes symphonic structure, and composes over 100 symphonies. His music balances elegance with innovation, capturing Enlightenment ideals in sound. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart arrives in 1781, aged 25, seeking independence from aristocratic patronage. Walk Vienna's streets in 1785 and you might encounter Mozart at the Burg Theater, conducting his operas, or at aristocratic salons, improvising at the piano. In 10 years, he composes 200 works, operas like The Marriage of Figaro and Don Giovanni, symphonies, concertos, chamber music, all while struggling financially, constantly moving between cheap apartments, borrowing money, dying at 35 in poverty, despite creating immortal masterpieces. Ludwig van Beethoven arrives in 1792, studying with Haydn, absorbing Vienna's musical tradition before exploding it. Stand outside the theater an der Wien in 1805 and hear the premiere of Fidelio, Beethoven's only opera. Walk past his apartment in 1824 as he composes the Ninth Symphony, despite being completely deaf, imagining sounds he cannot hear, creating music that transcends personal tragedy. Vienna's aristocracy supports this flowering. Prince Lichnowsky, Archduke Rudolf, Count Razumovsky, these patrons commission works, provide stipends and host performances, making Vienna irresistible to musical genius. Collapse and catastrophe. The World Wars, 1914 to 1945. World War I destroys everything. Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination in Sarajevo, 1914, triggers war. 4 years of carnage follow. The Habsburg Empire disintegrates. Emperor Charles I abdicates in November 1918. 6 centuries of Habsburg rule end. Vienna becomes capital of a tiny republic, German-speaking Austria, stripped of empire, its population of 2 million representing 1/3 of the entire country's population. The city designed to govern 50 million suddenly governs 6 million. Economic collapse, starvation, hyperinflation follow. The interwar period brings Red Vienna, socialist government building workers' housing, schools, and health clinics. The Karl Marx Hof and other massive housing complexes demonstrate municipal socialism's ambitions. But political violence simmers, erupting in brief civil war, 1934. March 1938. Nazi Germany annexes Austria in the Anschluss. Hitler, the failed Viennese artist, returns triumphantly. Vienna's Jews face immediate persecution. Of 200,000 Jews, 65,000 will die in the Holocaust. Those who can, flee. Freud escapes to London, Schoenberg to America. Thousands more scatter worldwide. World War II devastates Vienna. Allied bombing destroys 20% of buildings, including the Opera House. The Red Army captures the city in April 1945 after brutal street fighting. St. Stephen's Cathedral burns, its roof collapsing. Divided city to modern capital, 1945 to present. Vienna becomes occupied by 4 powers, American, British, French, and Soviet sectors, with the inner city jointly administered. The film The Third Man, 1949, captures this atmosphere. Noir intrigue in a ruined city, the zither music echoing through rubble-strewn streets. The 1955 State Treaty grants Austria neutrality and independence. The occupation ends. Vienna must reinvent itself, no longer imperial capital or Nazi stronghold, but neutral city between Cold War blocs. Vienna rebuilds carefully. The Opera House reopens in 1955. St. Stephen's Cathedral is restored. Historic buildings are repaired using original techniques. The city maintains its imperial architecture while modernizing infrastructure. The city reclaims its musical heritage. The Vienna Philharmonic resumes legendary status. The Vienna Boys Choir continues 6th-century tradition. Opera performances sell out years in advance. Classical music tourism becomes industry. Millions visit for concerts, operas, and musical pilgrimages. Stand in Vienna today and hear that same music echoing through centuries. In the Musikverein, the Vienna Philharmonic performs in acoustics unchanged since 1870. In St. Stephen's Cathedral, Mozart's Requiem commemorates the composer who died nearby. Along the Ringstrasse, street musicians play Strauss waltzes where the waltz king once strolled. Vienna's story is remarkable not just for its music, but for its survival. The city faced destruction repeatedly, yet preserved its essence, understanding that its identity lay not in military power or political dominance, but in culture, music, and civilization itself. Every cobblestone street holds memories. Emperors who ruled half of Europe, Ottoman armies repulsed twice, composers creating immortal beauty, intellectuals reimagining human understanding. Vienna transformed from fortress to palace, from imperial metropolis to modern capital, always maintaining its soul. The belief that music, art, and culture matter more than conquest or commerce. This was Vienna, Vindobona, Habsburg capital, city of music, a place where genius flourished for centuries, creating cultural treasures that define Western civilization. If you enjoyed this journey through 1,000 years of music and history, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss where we're going next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the past.